How's it going, everybody? Thanks for hanging out for a little bit. I always appreciate it. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. 1941's Citizen Kane is a landmark of a movie from the 1940s that, for anyone that's trying to get into old films, this is a great movie to check out. And this is also a movie that to this day still inspires filmmakers. Orson Welles, who wrote, directed, and starred in this film, was very innovative when he crafted just the way he shot the movie. This man invented shots for this film. There are a lot of old movies where people will just put the camera in a spot and just film like a regular, uh, like a mid shot, a wide shot, wide angle, and just shoot these wide frames. And you never got shots of really the floor, sometimes never even the ceiling, just completely just like the middle of the room, because often old movies were using these big sound stages where they never wanted you to see the lights from above the ceilings. Orson Welles was a director that added realism to the films of this era, which in turn helped the evolution of films to come, which is very, very noteworthy and why this film is very important. This man cut holes in the wooden floors and will put the camera so low so that he could show a real room. He liked to shoot in rooms that weren't really stages so that the set had a feeling of authenticity and realism. And this is something that a lot of older movies really, for the most part, seem to lack in the early days of film. And, for the most part, many people couldn't tell, if it's in black and white, a lot of people couldn't really tell fake backdrops from real ones when they were in black and white, the way old movies used to look, But, Orson Welles was definitely a game changer of a filmmaker from, like I said, putting holes in the floor to getting a ceiling so that people could see, look, no lights, it's a regular ceiling. To the beginning of the film where there's a shot where there's um, a snow globe that breaks on the ground, and the camera gets a reflection shot from the broken snow globe and creates sort of a fisheye effect. The kind of angle that you saw in like 90s rap music videos, like very, very like often back in the day. And this guy just was so good at inventing ways to convey a new a new shot or a new emotion. He would find ways to move things forward even though he wasn't telling a story in a linear fashion. He would connect the dots in a way so that we remembered characters from a certain scene and then come back later on, because he was telling the story basically backwards at times, because the movie starts at the end in sort of a Tarantino-esque fashion, and it works its way back by telling sort of accounts from the main character's life, or Charles Foster Kane, played by Orson Welles, told through the eyes of people speaking in interviews, because in the film, at the beginning of the film, the main character is shown dying. And so for the rest of the film, we're basically learning about this character through flashbacks. And it's sort of told through the eyes of the people that knew him. And, through these flashbacks, we see lots of different sides to this character. And it begins, the first flashback is when he's a kid. And we see him in kind of a country setting, very snowy setting. And his parents sort of came into some money, and his father is like abusive. And the mother wants to get him away from everything, wants him to be brought up in a better place, and so that he has a chance to, succeed in life and everything. So, he is pretty much sent away by the parents and sort of brought up to be this business tycoon. And when he grows up, decides what he wants to really do is he wants to run a newspaper just because he thinks it would be fun, basically. And, the whole time he's basically just doing it for his own personal kicks. He talks about how he wants to be a man of the people, and how the paper is there to serve everybody and to fight for injustice and all that. But really, this guy had many, many sides. And though he acted like he was like a man of the people and like a servant of the people, he was just very much, at times, pretty selfish, and at times could be very sullen and withdrawn and cold with people, even the closest that were to him, like his friends or even his, many wives, because he married a few times in the movie. And, the movie wasn't afraid, well, Orson Welles wasn't afraid to show, you know, a larger than life character that could be liked around a large group of people at a party, and, be well liked by his, closest friends and adored by women, and could be very, very fun around a huge crowd. But in private, he was very miserable and unhappy. And, there's a really cool message there in the contrast. And it shows, it doesn't matter how much money you have or how much, you might have, all this land and all these different businesses and everything. But, happiness, you got to get that from within. You got to get that from your friends, or you got to get that from your wife, people that care about you. But this guy really didn't let anybody in. He was just, I don't know, he just had his own kind of moral code, and very much just a leader amongst his group, but at the same time, not very well beloved. And I think that's one of the themes of the movie that it explores, is this guy that could have anything really, but what he probably wanted most out of anything was just love. And the movie ends in a pretty much the same fashion that it begins, because when it begins, it begins pretty much asking a question of what did his dying words mean. The famous Rosebud, his dying words that critics have been talking about for years, and I think that many people have come to agree that, because during the movie there are reporters that are trying to find out what were his last words, what do they mean, and people trying to talk to the reporter throughout the course of the film, trying to explain how he was like throughout his life, and give basically their interpretation of how he was with them, and just the kind of guy that he was in general. By the end of the movie, all they learn is, stuff about the man, but they never really find out what these last words really mean. So you're basically up to, it's up to you, it's up to the audience, it's up to your own conclusion. You got to make your own interpretation, basically. And this movie is just so great at letting you do that, and at the same time giving you plenty of information to just take it all in and get it for yourself. That's the mark of a great filmmaker, giving you just enough to put it together yourself, but still leaves it ambiguous enough that it's not spelled out for you. This movie is just so great, in that way, that it's like a painting. You can show it to different people, and different people can have an interpretation of what Rosebud could be, because some would say, oh, it's just a sled. It doesn't mean anything, The guy was thinking about his sled before he died. And, some can interpret it as his last thoughts were, of his lost innocence in childhood, That sled would basically represented the childhood that he once had and lost, or, or maybe represented the person that he could have been, but didn't, never was. The guy just shows so many different sides. All of a sudden, I'm turning into Sean Connery. Sorry. Different sides. I gotta enunciate my words. And shades. That works better since I'm. Oh yeah. I just keep wanting to go to the sh sound. And yeah, it's very dynamic, very just broad performance, and it really matches the movie, because the movie is very sort of bigger than life at times, you know, because this guy is such a big sort of figure, and the way people talk about him, you know, the way his story is told through the mouths of those that knew him, it just builds him up more as this larger than life being, you know, that he could never quite live up to that myth, you know, that level of legend that Charles Foster Kane was supposed to be. And there's a great David Fincher movie that's all about, I guess, the writing process of Citizen Kane. The movie's called Mank. Came out, I believe, last year or the year before. It was on Netflix, and one of David Fincher's best, in my opinion, up there with, you know, like Zodiac, you know, which in my opinion is another one of his masterpieces. But it's a Gary Oldman movie where he plays the writer of the screenplay for Citizen Kane. It's a very informative watch for anybody that wants to learn about the process of how this movie got made. And it makes for a nice companion to this movie. You know, for anyone that's maybe seen Mank but not Citizen Kane, it's great to watch them back to back. Makes for a nice double feature. And yeah, you know, this is just one that I think all film lovers will appreciate. You know, if you're getting into film and you're looking to be inspired, you know, there's a handful of movies that I can name that I think can get people's juices flowing and pumping. You know, Goodfellas to me would be one of them. You know, certainly like, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird and The Godfather and Bonnie and Clyde and Clockwork Orange. You know, Pulp Fiction. You know, some of the greatest movies of all time. And you know, I put The Lost Weekend in that category, and Psycho, and, you know, On the Waterfront, you know, and Double Indemnity. And Citizen Kane is one of those greats. You know, some people really do believe it is one of the best films of all time, and that's completely subjective. But when you watch the movie, you can see the craftsmanship, you can see the creative explosion as far as new ideas that, I mean, just watch other stuff from this period. Just watch other things that came out around this time. There's not that many films that look like this back then in 1941. So, yeah, Orson Welles, just like many people that came after him that were visionaries, you know, like a Tim Burton or a Scorsese or a Spielberg, you know, Orson Welles was one of these guys. He was a visionary. And Citizen Kane was his masterpiece. Highly recommend it. If there's a rating above 4 stars, this movie would have it, you know. But for me, 4 stars is, you know, the ceiling, the limit. And yeah, if I could do 4.5, fine. Citizen Kane, 4.5, 4 3/4, you baby. But this is gold. This is cinematic gold at its, you know, most pristine, most classic, and you know, it's out there for people to discover. It's on HBO Max. If you go on HBO Max, look on the Turner Classic Movies area. They have, you know, like a Cartoon Network area there. They got like a section for DC stuff. They got a section for just the HBO stuff, you know, and then there's a section for like the Turner Classic Movies, where they have all these old black and white greats, and Citizen Kane can be found right there if you're looking hard enough for it. And if you know, you want to get the hard copy, you know, I'd reach for mine and show it to you, but I don't want to run into the living room because it's sitting in there right now. I should have grabbed it before I sat down and made this so I can show you the cover, but you want to see it, that's what Google Images is for, baby. So yeah, thank you for hanging out for a little bit and listening to me gab on about this oldie but goodie, or I should say classic. And you know, I'm gonna keep on going through the list, as I always say, because I do have quite a long list of stuff I want to talk about and get to. And you know, there's so many movies that I want to talk about. A lot of black and white stuff, a lot of stuff from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s that is gonna come out pretty soon. For those of you that are you're just a little bit curious, you know. So if you are, go ahead and, you know, hit that like button and subscribe and, you know, comment and share. You know, it's all a big, big help, you know. And if not, you know, it's all good either way, you know. Life goes on, and so do I. So you guys take care and have a good one. Thanks for hanging out. It's always a pleasure. Peace.